Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tanisha, and I'm here with Hillsborough County Public Library presenting to you 3D printing design basics. So this is part of a two-part series. So tomorrow we'll be looking at the 3D printer, but today I think we're going to be doing what I consider the fun part and talking about how to design something to be 3D printed or just to design something for fun. Today we are doing 3D printing design basics with Tinkercad. Let me get this going. And so, of course, you know, we got to have our book shout out. So our book shout out for today is can't go better with the For Dummies series. So we have Tinkercad for Dummies. So it's a really awesome book filled with a bunch of starter projects, a bunch of tips and tricks. And for some of y'all that may be a little bit more familiar with 3D design, it also has some more advanced projects for you to do as well. So really cool book. I've used it in the past before and I really liked it. So I am going to go ahead and take myself off camera because we are going to dive into Tinkercad. All right, so one quick note before we get started with Tinkercad. For kids, for all of our kids that are watching today, and for parents who may be watching along, Tinkercad has really secured their site to make logging in for kids very safe. Unfortunately, for our purposes today, it's kind of hard to get everybody logged in to follow along with me. So if you're a parent, if you're a kid, the best way to view this program today is to watch what I'm doing and then follow along with it later when we post it to our YouTube channel when you have the time to create your own account. Because for kids, the parents have to also make an account and verify that their child is allowed to use Tinkercad, which is why it's probably easier for you to just see what I'm doing today and then create your account later and go in and use it yourself, because I really want you guys to use it because this is very cool. So after you sign in, so I've already logged into my account, this is going to be the first page that you see. So you can see kind of a sneak preview of the project that we'll be putting together today. But on this main page here, it has where you create your new design right here. It has your control panel with some other cool things that you can do right in here. I call myself Tanisha Works on Tinkercad. And up on the top, now your panel might look a little bit different on the top because I have mine in teacher mode, but most of the stuff is still the same. And the most important one I want to highlight here today before we jump into designing something is Learn. So I highly encourage you when you do get logged into Tinkercad later to take a look at this Learn page, because it has tutorials that go more in depth on how to make things in Tinkercad. It has a ton of stuff that you can do. It has lessons that you can follow along with, and it also has projects. So it has a bunch of really cool things for you to do that you can play around with and really get a good grasp on how Tinkercad works. So let's make something. So I am going to click on Create New Design. Okay, so you can see everything that populates here that comes up on your page. The first thing that I want to point out is how you make things in Tinkercad. So the most important thing to remember is that you make more complex shapes by using simpler shapes. So on the right-hand side of your screen here, you can see that there are a ton of shapes. So you got your basic shapes, you got your box, you got your cylinder. I'm just going to scroll down here so you can get an idea of what you have. So these are all of the shapes that you have in Tinkercad to make your more complex item. So today we are going to make a very, very primitive house. And you're going to see how we're going to do that here in just a minute. Another thing that I want to highlight is what's called your work plane. So you can see here it says work plane on the screen. And your work plane is essentially the grid that you're going to use to create your object. So I'm using my mouse right now to scroll in, to zoom in, and to zoom out. For all of you at home, probably the best way to use Tinkercad is definitely by using a mouse, because you have a little bit more control over what you can do. So I'm going to use my mouse to do most of the stuff today. So I can zoom in and out with my cursor. And if I hold my cursor down, my scroll thing down, I'm sorry, you can move your work plane around. And if you right click, you can zoom, you can look all around it. So this is going to make more sense when I drag out my first shape, which we're going to work with the box. So I just click and drag my box onto the work plane. And I see we got some questions. Don't worry, I'm going to get to them at the end. So here, let me actually keep that open. So here we got our box. And now you can see what I mean when I'm moving around my work plane. So I'm using my right click and I'm holding it down to move around my work plane. So you can see on the bottom of my box, I can see on the top, and I can see on the side. So now I am going to hover my mouse over my box so we can look at a couple of the elements of how Tinkercad works. So Tinkercad uses millimeters. So that's how they measure things. So when you see, let me click on that again, this 20 by 20, that is 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters. So you are able to change it in, you are able to change it to inches if you like, but you know, I'm sure as all of the kids are learning in science, most scientists and most things in the scientific fields do use metric. So it's probably just a good way to learn your metric. And as you will learn tomorrow, if you attend our 3D printing class, that is also how a lot of 3D printers are configured to work in millimeters. So Tinkercad does use millimeters. Also on the grid, you can use your arrow keys to move your shape around the work plane. So you can, I'm using my arrow keys on my keyboard to move. And right now, my box is moving around by 1 millimeter. So each one of these teeny tiny, let me zoom in, each one of these teeny tiny little boxes is a millimeter. And the larger box is 10 millimeters. If you wanted to move your items around a little bit more on the snap where it says snap grid here, you could make it so that it moves around even less than that by 0.1 if you wanted to, or by 5. But today we're just going to leave that how it is. Now I'm going to make a little house today, and I actually think that 20 by 20 is a little bit bigger than I'd like it to be. So I'm going to make it 15 by 15. So one thing to remember about Tinkercad is that there are a ton of different ways to do the same thing. So I'm going to just show you one way to change the dimensions of your shape. So I want mine to be 15 millimeters by 15 millimeters. So I'm going to zoom in a little here so you guys can see it. I am going to take this white square here and I am going to move it in. So 15 by, oops, we got it there, 15. And I'm going to leave it. If you click on the top one, you can see here it says 20 millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and leave that 20 millimeters. So that's one way that you can change the dimension of your shape. So we've done our first part. We've designed the first part of our house. We made the base part of our house. Like I said, it's very, very primitive, but it's still going to look like a house. Actually, I'll show you another way that you can change is on your panel here. Now this panel doesn't come up for every shape, which is why I'm not going to use it today, but I am going to minimize that here so we have a little bit more room. So on to our next step. What does every house need? Every house needs a roof. So I'm going to go back to my panel here and I see my green roof. And I'm going to drag it out. So now I have a roof. Now, what's the big problem with our roof here? The roof is sitting on the ground or on the directly on the work plane. We want our roof to be on top of our house. So I'm going to actually leave the dimensions of my roof. I'm not going to change it. So it is 20. Oops, let me scroll out so you can see. It is 20 by 20, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone. So I'm going to let it stay 20 by 20. And the reason why I put this down 15 by 15 is so that the roof is hanging over a little bit. You know, like when you're running home and it's raining, the roof is hanging over a little bit so you don't get rained on, kind of that same concept. So the first thing I am going to do with my roof is raise the roof so it can sit on top of my house, the base of my house. So as we saw before, as I hover over this white square here, our house is 20 millimeters high. So I call this little black thingy here a carrot. So what I am going to do with my carrot is I am going to raise it to 20 millimeters, the roof to 20 millimeters. So now it is up 20 millimeters high, ready to sit on my roof. Now, again, what's wrong with our house here? The roof is way too far away from the actual house. So we are now going to look into the concept of aligning and grouping. So how do we do that? What am I talking about? Let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you are dealing with two separate pieces of geometry to make your shape is you're going to want to select both shapes. So the easiest way to select more than one shape is to draw a boundary box. Again, you're probably wondering, how do you do that? It is really easy. So what I'm going to do is I have my mouse here. You can see it out kind of to the left here, is I'm going to hold down my left click. I'm holding it down. And I am going to start to draw my boundary box. Remember, you're holding down your left click to make this boundary box. And I am going to select both items. And so once both items are within your boundary box, you let go. So now both of my items are selected. Oops, I just unselected them. As you can see, now they move around together. So that's step one. Step two, again, our roof is way over to the right-hand side of our house. So up in your toolbar up here, we are going to align. So when you hover over the different items here, you can see what they do. So we are going to select align. And you can see there's a bunch of little dots and lines and stuff that came up. So when you hover over each line, it tells you how the shape will look once it's aligned to how you want it to be. So we want our house and our roof to be sitting on top of one another. So let me scroll in so you can really see. And when you hover over, you can see kind of the outline of what it'll look like once it's complete. So that's what we want our house to look like, right? We want to make sure that it's aligned perfectly. And the reason, so as you saw before, I could technically drag everything over so myself and just like, keep using my mouse to, line everything up. But what I really like, there we go, about our align button is that it makes everything perfect for you. Oops, almost perfect. I need to align it one more time. There we go. So now, as you can see with my house, it is now, the roof is perfectly aligned with my house. Now, and once I'm done, I can just click away. Now, there's one more problem with my roof and my house. Uh-oh, they're not connected. So this is another cool thing that I want to tell you about Tinkercad, is that Tinkercad automatically saves everything. So if you mess up or if you do something, oh no, I forgot to save, it automatically saves. Another great aspect of Tinkercad is that it has the handy dandy undo. So I'm just going to press undo because I dragged my roof away from my house. And now it's back on there. So in order to make sure that my roof and my house are connected, we are going to group them together. So how do we group? So remember that boundary box that I talked about earlier. I'm going to left click. I'm going to hold down my left click key. on my mouse, and I'm going to draw that boundary box. So now both of my items are selected. I'm going to go up to my toolbar up on the top, and I'm going to select group. And remember, when you hover over each thing, it tells you what it is. So I'm going to hit group. And now my house is and my roof are attached. Oops, that's where the handy dandy undo button comes in handy. So here you go. Now my house and my roof are now put together, and now you have a complete-ish house. So another way you can make sure that your item is grouped together is that they will change the same color. So remember, our roof was green, now it's red to match the same color as the rest of the house. So now you have a nice house put together. So the last thing, and I wish I had more time to show you more, but there's so much cool things that Tinkercad does, but I know we got some questions, so I want to make sure we get to those. So let's say that, oh no, I don't want this roof, or I want to make my roof bigger, or I want to make my roof smaller. You can always ungroup. So ungroup is right next to the group. So if you want to take them apart so you can tweak or you can fix things, all you have to do is hit ungroup. Again, you can tell that your items are ungrouped because of the colors. So I'm going to group them back together. So last but not least, your house needs an opening. So we are going to create an opening. So I'm going to use the round roof, although we're going to use it a little bit differently. So I'm going to drag out our round roof. And remember how we changed dimensions. So I am going to drag this in. Actually, let me show you a different way to change your dimensions. So I want this value, this here, to be 10. So if you double click on the value, I can then write in 10 and change it. So that's another way you can change the size of something. And I'm just going to drag this one in here. Make that 10. There we go. So again, our house needs an opening. So I am going to position this shape to create my opening. So this is where a mouse definitely comes in handy. So I'm using my mouse right now to position the opening of my house. And so now I clicked on my opening. I'm going to push it in a little bit to the house. And I know you guys are probably at home thinking, what is she about to do? So one thing that you may want to do with your shapes, remember how I said that you can put different shapes together to create objects. You can also use a shape to subtract from an existing shape. To make another shape. Let me show you how that works. So I am going to reopen that panel I discussed earlier, and you're going to see an option called Whole. So I'm going to click away from everything just to make sure that I select the one thing I want to use. So let me reselect my opening. I am going to make this opening into a hole. So now you can kind of see that it kind of cuts something out, but let's go ahead and complete this. Right here. So don't forget your handy dandy boundary box. I'm going to left click. I'm going to make sure both my hole and my house are selected. And don't forget about group. When you want to combine shapes, you got to group them. So I'm going to hit group. And now you have an opening to your house. So I just showed you some very, very, very basic things that we can do in Tinkercad to create shapes. So I see that there's a lot of questions there. So let me go ahead. We got plenty of time for the questions. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to leave myself off camera just in case I need to demo anything. Let's see what's going on. All right, and if you guys have any questions about Tinkercad or how to create something, please go ahead and put them into the questions panel here because, yeah, definitely put them into the questions panel because Tinkercad is really cool. So first question I have is, can you make every chess piece in Tinkercad? You theoretically could. If you wanted to create an entire chess set using Tinkercad, you absolutely could. So based on what we did today here, you can see how you can use the shapes on your panel here. Let me hide my questions panel here. You can use all of these different shapes to create your own shape. So it is entirely possible for you to create a chess set. You can make whatever you want. I created jewelry in Tinkercad. I made a necklace. You can create whatever you like, wherever your imagination takes you, you can create it. And you can definitely create it in Tinkercad. So let's see other questions here. Oh, this is a good one. What is 3D printing and how do you do it? So that is an excellent question. And if you have the time to be back here tomorrow at the same time, 4 o'clock, I am going to cover that. So I have a 3D printer. We are going to take a look at how it works and how it prints. So Chris, if you could put that link in the chat box, there's going to be a direct link to the program tomorrow so that you can go ahead and register, but I will be covering all of that tomorrow. And that goes for everybody. If you're not already registered for the 3D printing how it works program tomorrow, again, it's going to be tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Please register because it's going to be really, really cool. It's something that I've been working on for a little bit. So I'm really excited to present it to y'all. And we're going to talk about how a 3D printer works. So it's here where you're gonna see it working in person, or as far as in person, you're gonna see it working virtually, but it's gonna be really cool. So definitely take a look at that there. Next question, is there a way to change the color after you group? Yes, let's take a look at that. So let's say you don't want your house to be red anymore. So here where it says solid, you click on that. And here are all of your options. I believe that you can make your own, but for the sake of time today, I'm just going to pick one. So let's see, my favorite color is orange. So you can make your house orange. So a bunch of different colors that you can do here. And we also have the link to Tinkercad in our in the chat as well. Good. Tinkercad is really cool. For all the parents watching, please make sure to monitor if your child has their own email, be sure to monitor your email because for a kid under the age of 16, I believe, to maybe 13 to set up their own account, it does need to be verified by the parent. So just make sure that you go ahead and just go and say, yep, I'm the parent. They're allowed to have Tinkercad and do that. Let's see if we have any other questions. If not, we have a little bit more time than I thought, so I might demo something else that's really cool because we definitely have a little bit more time. Let me make sure there's no more questions. Doesn't look like it, so let's demo one last thing before we sign off for today. So this is actually a new thing. I've been teaching Tinkercad for about 6 years, and this is something new that I saw when I was putting together this class. So there is a shape, I'm doing air quotes here, called Scribble. So I'm going to drag that to my work plane. And here, using your mouse or your touchpad on your laptop or your computer, you can make your own shape. So let's see, what am I going to do? I think I'm just going to write something. So I'm going to write out hi. Hey, y'all. All right. So once I've created my shape, I go to the bottom right-hand side and I hit done. And now my shape is created. So you can see that's really cool. So when we say you could create any shape, you can literally create any shape. It's really cool. Oop, I just saw something else there. One more question. If you have a 2D outline drawing, can I stretch it out in Tinkercad to make it 3D? So you can. I wish I had time today to show you how to do that, but it is definitely a feature in Tinkercad that exists. In fact, let's go back to that Learn panel that I was talking about earlier. Let's see, how do we get back to it? I might have just, yep, there it is. So on our Learn panel, you have starters and you have lessons. And also, I think in the search, there's also an FAQs, but it'll tell you how to do that. So you can import an image. I think it has to be an SVG. I don't think it does JPEG or PNG, but that should be easy to convert on your computer depending on what you have. But it is possible for you to do that. So again, I wish I had time to show you how that works, but it is possible for you to do it. All right, let's see if we have anything else before we sign off here for the day. All right, so let's see, any last minute things before we sign off here. Let me go back to my page here. So again, remember how I mentioned before, Tinkercad saves everything that you do. So, and it also gives them really funny names. So the project that we were working on today that Tinkercad decided to call it was the Super Snagit. So I'm going to go back into my Super Snagit. And there's my high. So yeah, you can draw your own stuff. And actually, let me show you one more thing. Way more thing before we go. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any last minute questions. Here. All right, oh, thanks you guys, couple of thanks you there. All right, so one thing that you may want to learn about, and this will come in handy when we do tomorrow, is export. So let's say that you got your hands on a 3D printer and you want to print something out. So when you're ready, you would hit export. And this is really important to remember. Most printers, including the one that we will be using tomorrow, takes things in STL format. So if you were ever able to print something, in the past, you may have heard that 3D printing was something that we were able to offer in the library. Of course, because of our current circumstances, unfortunately, that is not something that we were able to do at this moment. Hopefully, it's something we'll be able to do in the future. But let's say you do have a friend, or there's a makerspace around, or that you have access to, you would export that, export your item into an STL, and that makes it ready to print. And we will talk a little bit more about how, of course, we're going to talk a lot more about how things print tomorrow at 4. So this is the very basics of design. So let me jump back over to my slide here. So a little bit before we go, thank you so much for joining. We answered all the questions already. You guys were amazing. Thank you. If you have any other general library questions, please feel free to contact us. Our phone number is listed there. You can also email us, text us, a whole bunch of other different ways to get in contact with us. We do have the link also in the chat, but for more library programs and events, we have that link as well. And of course, the website that we were using today to learn how to 3D model and learn how to make 3D objects was Tinkercad. I really hope that you guys, if you don't already have an account, I really hope you guys go ahead and create your account. I'm going to come on my camera here just really quickly to say thank you so much for joining us. And please, sign up for the program tomorrow. I think it's going to be really cool. And thanks again. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.